For the second time in my life, I am in the pregnancy portal. Or maybe it would be more accurate to say that I am the portal. Because few portal experiences are so primal and visceral as this, and so physical. I am a literal physical material portal for a new being, a new human to come through into this life. A soul taking shape in the human form that is now being built inside of me. So I thought I would take this chance to talk about it, about this experience, maybe try to see if I can get to some deeper layers of my experience, these suppressed sides that anyway this podcast is about, to meet them. I also want to connect to the whole idea of experiencing your life and your being as being a portal. Just as much as this new person is being built inside of me, I am also being rebuilt by this process of carrying and building them. Humans place a lot of value on their constructions, the marvels of technology and engineering and infrastructure. But the engineering of a human being inside the womb is often overlooked in all its magnificence. It's an ordinary experience. After all, we have all gone through it in order to be here. And many people have gone through the experience of being that engineer, or their body being it. So, the construction of a human being is very mundane. But perhaps everyone hasn't visited a skyscraper. But everyone has been born. The thing that I find strange about being pregnant, and I find it frankly uncomfortable, is this incredible emphasis that is now placed on my body. It feels like my life is suddenly filled with all kinds of checks and tests, urine samples, blood samples, tests for chromosome variations, ultrasounds, and midwives prodding and measuring my growing belly. And outside of the medical institutions, comments, looks, touching of the belly by strangers. Not that that has happened a lot, but it's an experience that I don't enjoy. How do you say it? The attention. If you have a big belly, you can't hide it anymore. And that makes me feels like my body is not mine anymore. It's treated much more like an object, with its main purpose being a vehicle carrying this new life, creating this new being. And sadly, I have felt that my body is not mine, even before being pregnant. And that was maybe the main reason why I resented becoming a woman at first, when I was a teenager. Because it seemed that something was lost, some ability to inhabit a neutral position as a human being, instead being objectified. Of course, this happens to others than women too, but I can only speak from my experience in a female body. And I guess it didn't help that I experienced my body being abused. as though my experience within it didn't matter, as though I was nothing. It was just a body. And these are things that are echoed back to me in my pregnancy by the medical institution. And I understand that it's been built that way. And that there's reasons for it, and in the best of worlds it works well and people are taken care of, but it also feels like my personhood doesn't really matter as much as the work that my body is doing, my identity. Of course, this isn't so surprising. We have I exist in a culture that rests on materialist foundations, where the physical is in focus, because it can be observed and measured. And it is important what my body is doing. It's important work. But this creates a strange and contradictory experience in being pregnant, because the body usually knows what it's doing, and it feels like I am just along for the ride. Sure, I can eat my vitamins and try to help it on the way, to help the baby grow and be healthy, but in being pregnant, it doesn't actually feel that the I of my ego or my identity or persona, or what you want to call it, is achieving anything. It's just my body doing what it knows to do. And here another strange contradiction rears its head. During and after my last pregnancy, I started to realize that I was living very much in my mind. I was, and am still, to a certain degree, mainly attributing value to things that I have crafted through the use of my mind, while the things that arise out of my body's natural functioning are of less value, because it was not actually the I of my ego, that created it, or that I planned it with my mind. And this interesting matter is worth inspecting further, because it also means that creations that seem to just naturally flow out through some kind of a channeling process are devalued over those that I design and plan for with my strategic mind. I always thought myself to be a person who appreciates the free expression of art when it comes from a more intuitive or spiritual place. But my pregnancy showed me that this was not actually the case. My mind felt appalled by all the focus on my body's natural functioning and started to feel overlooked, like a little child crying for attention. So I desperately tried to hold on to my projects, my intentional creations, with the result that I wasn't able to fully appreciate the experience of caring for a new human, because I didn't feel like they were truly mine. They just happened to come through the portal, the, the portal of my body. But what if I could see myself more as a portal overall, than only as this thinking, planning thing of my mind? In a way, the experience of being a portal for my child also helped me to access a new way of treating my creative work. In giving birth, you have to surrender and let your body do what it knows to do. And the same is true for a certain type of creations too. I have noticed this particularly in getting back to music. Maybe it's not a surprise that I found my way back to music after this experience as becoming a mother. Maybe it flowed more naturally because I could let it flow. But also, in creating music, I have noticed tendencies of my ego or my mind to want to control the output, the result, to want to direct it so that I can show off my sound editing skills or something like that. But over the spring and summer, when I became pregnant again, I was often so exhausted and nauseous that I was unable to sit by my computer and work. I couldn't edit music in the software. What I was able to do in between of the nausea was to sit a moment by my piano or ukulele and just let the music flow through me and feel it through my body, the way that the music wanted to, or the way that my body naturally did. Again, this process is teaching me to surrender and just be the portal. But let's jump back to the mind-body contradiction again for a bit. I don't want to leave it in this combative place, like the mind is all bad and the body is all good and natural. As you should know by now if you have listened to other episodes, my intention is to find the shared spaces to enable a dual or paradoxical perspective where both sides of a polarity have their own value and can be appreciated for that. In writing these words down, there was a process going on in my mind where I'm taking those disparate experiences and gluing them together, trying to create a coherent expression to share. But I'm also trying to let it flow out in the way that the story wants to. So I'm both affecting the story and channeling it. I am both a person and a portal. And that is a great tension in this human life. We are experiencing this life through ourselves, our egos, and I think that we should. I don't believe in the killing of the ego, but I believe in the communion between the ego and something vaster. The ego, the self, the wanting for just me and my life gives me a motivation to allow myself to surrender to the portal, to channel what comes through. In that interaction, I can be an active participant, but I can also be surprised and amazed at what comes through. In that, I'm experiencing the dance of life, partly as me directing the movement, or at least my actions towards some direction, and partly as being surprised by the flow of steps that I couldn't have planned for in advance. And this is also the magic of being the pregnant portal. I am creating the possibility for something entirely new and surprising to come into the world. The most random thing there is, perhaps. A new being, a new human being, a new expression of life. But yeah, in doing so, I'm also being affected, being recreated. Earlier, I believed it was so horrible and uncomfortable to be this pregnant portal because I experienced a loss of my sense of self and my ego. My ego felt a shock when the body got all the attention instead of my mind. It almost felt like a type of death, like a death of an earlier way of life that had been resting on the foundations created with my mind. Overall, I think the connections between life and death are not spoken about enough, particularly how the experience of creating life also brings a kind of death with it. I felt my earlier way of life dying, and it was a tremendous loss, just as much as that new life was a gift. But I wasn't prepared for the sorrow and the grieving that entering motherhood also signified, at least for me. I had only taken part in more rose-tinted descriptions of motherhood, I feel. So my expectations were that it would be just love and beauty, and not also a kind of death and destruction of my earlier way of life. But this is a matter to look deeper in other episodes, or I think I spoke a bit about this in the monster mother episode already. Now let's get back to the theme of being a portal. Maybe the experience of being a portal has to include both these mirror sides, birth and death, because in all transformational cycles, endings and beginnings both have their role to play. They're both a part of life. And what is a portal if not an opening for some kind of a shift, a transformation, or transmutation of energy, a change? Whether we view it as a literal portal through space and time, or a more abstract one into a new mindset or a way of being, there is a change going on. By now I realize that the painful birth, death experience of becoming a mother might just have been a blessing in disguise, paving way for something else, something stranger to grow in me, in experiencing myself as being the portal in a very literal sense. I can access a way of being that is beyond what my mind could have planned for. Through my body, through that direct experience, I'm remembering how we are all so much more than our minds or our bodies. Maybe we are all portals in our own lives. We are portals within and in ourselves. We are our own interface to this life, where our own way of being affects our life experience. And we are portals affecting each other by what experiences we create for others in our presence. Simply by the way we interact with each other, we are creating different possibility spaces for each other, whether consciously or subconsciously. We are portals that affect each other by what we allow to flow through us into the world, whether it comes in artwork or new beings or the words you choose to say. We all hold this creative, generative power, and it comes out in a union of body and mind, and a union of ego with something vaster, something beyond us that we're all a part of. Call it God or love or soul or spirit or just life. We are portals of life, portals for life, living our lives. As I was writing this 13th episode of Dark White Disco, I started feeling like something is kind of wrapping up for this podcast, at least for the time being. Looking back, this has been a year-long process of me trying to actively meet with sides that I've been either suppressing or hiding. And I think in just doing this podcast, in using my voice and talking instead of hiding between the more abstract shapes of written words, something has slowly been shifting for me in my approach to my life. Now I do feel like I hold a deeper sense of acceptance for my existence and my way of being, where I can hold different sides, both the idea that what I do and who I am is not really anything special, it just is, I just am, but also the idea that my life is meaningful and special, and that perhaps there is some value I can share to others through my words and creations. And by looking at those suppressed sides, they have gotten their space, and they're no longer screaming so loudly inside of me. And my words and creations seem to be shifting a bit. I no longer feel that pressing need to go into these suppressed spaces and the dark shadows in the same way. I feel like I've done that. And they got their time in the spotlight. And maybe I'll come back to it at a later time, when more subconscious depths reveal themselves, or I go through some new experiences. Maybe they just want to be in the dark for a bit as I go on into this next adventure, another motherhood. For now, I feel like something is wrapping up a bit or changing shape. And my words want to take the shape of more simply sharing experiences, some findings from my life, maybe more in a mix of conscious mental process and deeper inner work. I feel a call to be pulled out from the dark void into a place where the light and the dark mingle and dance, and more of an in-between space where I can use different approaches, where I can both explore the conscious heights and subconscious depths alike. So I've been testing out, experimenting with a new way of expressing through a video podcast that I decided to call Mysterious Studies. Because, yeah, I love to study, but I want to leave space for that to take shape, go into the areas it wants to, that project, that process, so it can be a bit mysterious what it turns out. And with this shift, I'm stepping out of the dark void and maybe putting a bit less energy into this podcast, Dark Void Disco, and focusing a bit more on getting a few things out through this Mysterious Studies podcast. As always, I need to treat this project with a gentle openness, holding my hand open for whatever bird wants to land there and be expressed by me, or fly out through the portal that is me. I'm also curious to explore a bit more of a spontaneous type of expression where I choose a theme and discuss it more freely. And just let myself be more of that portal, or let that randomness come out a bit more, the spontaneity. While I also partly did this in Dark Void Disco, most of the episodes I prepared with the majority of materials written before I started recording, because I was afraid of that randomness. I was afraid I wouldn't find the right words. I was afraid of actually letting myself channel what wanted to come out. I was afraid it would be too chaotic, actually. And then I've decided that, well, in this next project, or maybe overall in my expression, I just want to experiment with having a bit more of that free space for the randomness. And it can be a bit messy. It's fine. Or maybe I will just end up writing it all beforehand again. Then that's how it will turn out. We'll see. So, yeah, I guess in this episode of Dark Void Disco now I'm creating a bit of a bridge for people if they are curious to take part of these ramblings. Then you can still do so, maybe more through that project, through Mysterious Studies. And that one I also want to keep free, with the majority of the episodes just free episodes where I share the core of what I want to say around different themes and around perspective shifts that I've experienced, what I've discovered during my life, my experiences on this journey of trying to see my life from in a deeper way, or yeah, kind of look beyond just the purely physical levels. And then on top of that, there will be some bonus episodes that I will share through my Substack or Patreon. Just more elaborations or stories that I feel I need to keep behind the added boundary of a paywall. And I'm gonna use this bonus podcast feed that I created already in February, Deep View Disco, to share any bonus episodes, really. They could be connected to Dark Void Disco or Mysterious Studies. Those are like the bonus episode podcast feeds, available both through Substack and Patreon. I also found it funny how I was really excited about telling these stories, these bonus stories through Deep View Disco, and then like a few weeks after I initiated that, I got the realization that I was pregnant, and then it started this whole nausea and exhaustion in the beginning. So I wasn't really able to do what I had set out to do. And that whole thing had to take a pause. And that's just how these things work. Sometimes in being the portal or the channel, you have to accept the thing that comes through you is a need for rest. Maybe it isn't that strategically planned next fantastical project, but maybe that is a half a year of need for taking it a bit more easy and resting. So, yeah. In this Mysterious Studies podcast, I have a dream of creating more of a community, like a Discord community, for anyone really who listens to my ramblings and finds it maybe interesting or would like to share with other listeners. So I have created a Discord community, which is a community server, and I'm going to attach, for the first few episodes, I'm going to attach the link so that you can just access it for free as a little thank you. If you want a space to communicate, you can go there. Or, I don't know, hang in the background. That's what I do on most Discord servers, and then maybe jump in sometimes to chat a bit. And then later I guess it will only be accessed by becoming a member of Patreon or Substack, because it's good to keep those a little wall between them. Usually I'm still a bit scared of this whole random aspect of the internet, so, and in becoming more vulnerable and sharing things more openly. So, but now you can have this secret little link there as a listener of this. But that link will expire, I think it's a month or so. It might not work if you listen to this episode a month later or even later. So, yeah. At the time when I'm publishing this episode, I also have published the first Mysterious Studies episode, so you can look at the video podcast, and if you want to see my face, my weird facial expressions, then you can. But you can also just listen to the audio-only podcast feed and check it out if it resonates with you. Funnily enough, I almost feel like it feels more vulnerable for me to try to express myself in a slightly more casual tone that I do in Mysterious Studies, because on Dark Void Disco, it's almost like I have been channeling a version of me that is slightly more intense and dramatic than I use in my everyday life. So it's a bit more of a theatrical role. And in Mysterious Studies, I'm maybe a bit more of just an everyday me, with all that awkwardness that comes with it. At least that's how it felt when I was recording it, but you can of course judge for yourself. And I don't know how later episodes turn out, because my way of expressing doesn't stay in one consistent shape for long. It needs different ways, different outlets, so let's see how it flows out. And with my current condition of being this pregnant portal, this new project might flow in a very slow way as well. Or maybe it's gonna take a break. I just felt that I needed to get these first few episodes out that were really like pushing in the back of my throat. And then I have to do that, and then I'll take it from there and see how the pacing goes after that. So when I'm on the parental leave with my child, it might be that I'm not doing a lot with these projects, or it might be that I have a need for a space to express. Because on my last parental leave, I was very frustrated because I thought I had to sacrifice everything. All other channels of expressions, because all my energy had to go to this new human. And partly that is true, and partly it can't be that way, because as they all say, as it is said, you have to nurture yourself to nurture another. And this is one of the most difficult balancing acts I've experienced, particularly when nurturing myself includes my creative urges, which are not usually seen as acceptable ways of nurturing yourself. Is, oh, you have to stay well fed, you have to drink water, you have to sleep enough. It's not often said, oh, you have to take a few hours away to just write or draw or play music. But it is true. Sometimes you need to, even if you have a baby, if you are able to. And last time I wasn't able to realize that. So this time around, I hope I can experiment with getting this balance better and actually asking for help when I really need to. Or maybe I won't have that same need this time around. I don't know. I'm quite scared. But I'm also excited. This is life. It's the randomness of new experiences, new adventures. And you don't know how it's gonna turn out beforehand. You have to experience it and go through it. And then you can learn from it and share your findings. So that's my process anyway. So now in ending, I want to take a moment to thank you and anyone who has listened so far. Whether you just listen to some random episodes or just this or all of them, I'm thankful. Your presence has been felt somehow and appreciated, because I can feel that my words can bring something for someone else, whether it's entertainment or something motivating or inspirational. And even though my approach to creating needs to come mainly from a deeply subjective need, I do enjoy knowing that there could be some value for others too in it. So thanks for joining on this journey, and you're welcome to come with me on the next one. But as a final note, I feel like probably the journey of this podcast of Dark Void Disco is not over yet either. Maybe it's just entering a slower stage for a while. Or maybe it needs to be more spontaneous, and I'll see. We'll see and dance to the tempo that it chooses, that life chooses. So you can do to dance on or to be still.